Good afternoon, everyone. It is my honor to now turn it over to the military. Jerry was a pillar of this community, and we see his presence every time we enter the building and this synagogue. Jerry was instrumental in physically hanging these signs, these shalom signs, on the walls in the front of the building. So even though we might not have known that his were the hands that hung those signs, they were. Death will come. We cannot enter in judgment with it. Our question of why will always go unanswered. But this does not mean that we are helpless. We can, and we do, rob death of ultimate victory. We live our lives so that when death comes, it takes us from the world, but we leave it a little better than we found it. So did Jerry leave this world better than he found it. I'd now like to call up Jill, Gary, and Danielle Hockett for a reading.
There are so many things to say today, but when I tried to narrow it down, I thought I'd talk about time, because that's the one thing my father always had for all of his children was time. So here's just a little snippet. Dad was quiet, stubborn, opinionated, and driven, but he was fiercely loyal and proud of his children underneath his stern demeanor. He was never a man of many words, so he expressed his love through his actions. Over the years, he eagerly helped us move into our first apartments, each one of us. And every home we purchased, he and Mom would work their magic, Mama would design, and Dad would build. Gary and I moved 6 times, once across country, and for the first 5 of those moves until his late 70s, he happily came with his tools and a credit card. New destinations allowed us to explore new coffee shops and restaurants. For nearly 80 years, Dad had bonded over our love of coffee. As a child, I always yearned for a sip of his coffee, so no one else in our home would drink with him. So Dad started pouring me a cup of milk with a hint of coffee until I was able to handle the full cup. When I worked for the airlines, he would travel and sample coffee from around the world. Mama jokingly blamed him for my coffee habit and my waste of money at coffee shops, but it was our way to connect. When Gary, Danielle, and I decided to move to Jacksonville to be closer to family, Dad was ready to embark on a new adventure with us. He was always up for exploring every coffee shop on the beaches surrounding the surrounding areas. Our weekly outings were a perfect opportunity for Dad to leave the house, forget about dialysis, and enjoy a hot cup of decaf and a Danish. He would often say they were not quite as good as the New York bakeries or those little silver coffee houses on the corner of the city streets. But he said the company made up for it. The joy of being closer to family and sharing coffee outings made those moments memorable. I'm wearing one of Dad's many watches to keep him close. It doesn't keep perfect time anymore, but neither will my heart without him here. Still, it ticks on just like we will, because that's what Dad wanted, to keep going, find joy, and live fully. One of the many blessings of moving to Florida is to be closer with the family and the bonus time with Dad. His many health challenges had changed him. He was still the same stubborn man, but he was also softening and becoming more eager to share stories. Although my dad couldn't express his love verbally, I never once doubted his absolute love for his family. Over the past 2 years, it was heartwarming to see him become more open, more expressive, and to hear him to tell us he loved us, even the hours before he passed. No matter where I go, Dad, you'll always be with me, and I'll miss you.
I just wanted to say a couple of things. If I repeat myself, I apologize, but over the last 2 years, Jerry and I had many, many conversations, and he was always repeating himself. So I sort of joined in the fun, and we became very close over the last several years since I became sick. And no matter how sick he got, he was always the first one to ask me how I was doing. He was a very very, very good man. Sometimes he was cantankerous, sometimes he was objective, but we told each other the truth. And right at the end, when I was in the hospital, we spoke, and he mentioned when he got up to sit next to the big man, he would try and make sure that he would look out for us and the rest of his family. So, thank you, Jerry. Love you. Goodbye.
I never know what to say at these things, but I guess my fondest memory of my grandfather was when he took me to the shipyard here in Florida when I came to visit one summer. And he told me all the stories of the Navy, and the one he always repeated was the one about how he watched his USS Boxer get dismantled. And I always loved hearing it, no matter how many times he'd repeat it. And some of my other favorite stories was how he met my grandmother. I never got tired of those either. And I'm never gonna get tired of remembering them. I love you, Grandpa.
I'd now like to call up grandchildren Zach, Jacob, Morgan, and Elliot.
There is a time for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for being born, and a time for dying, a time for planting, and a time for uprooting the planted, a time for destroying, and a time for healing, a time for tearing down, and a time for building up, a time for weeping, and a time for laughing, a time for wailing, and a time for dancing.
A time for throwing stones, and a time for gathering stones. A time for embracing, and a time for refraining from embraces. A time for seeking, and a time for losing. A time for keeping, and a time for discarding. A time for tearing, and a time for selling. A time for silence, and a time for speaking. A time for loving, and a time for hating, a time for war, and a time for peace.
Adonai, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath, our days like a passing shadow. We come and go like grass, which in the morning shoots up renewed, and in the evening fades and withers. You cause us to turn to dust, saying, "Return, O mortal creatures, would that we wise, that we understood where we are going."
For when we die, carry nothing away. Our glory does not accompany us. Mark the wholehearted, and behold the upright. They shall have peace. Adonai, you redeem the souls of your servants, and none who trust in you shall be desolate.
Psalm 23. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me to lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. I'd now like to call up Donna Oringer. Oh, Deb, sorry. Deb, please. Deborah Chait, please come up.
First, I'd like to welcome everybody and thank you for being here and honoring my dad and his memory. It's showing that all of you loved him and the support that you're giving the family by being here today. I'm not a great public speaker getting up here. My sisters and the rabbis will give you a lot of memories to share with Dad. But in 2009, for Father's Day, I created, I thought, a very special collage of my dad. And he loved it, and it sat on his desk in his office. And it really hit home with everything about how I felt about my father. So I'd like to just read that to you and tell you about that. So it's labeled, just so you have an idea of what it looked like. And it was, for Father's Day. So Father, and I had to pick very important words and phrases to put together on how I felt about my father. So Father, he's a male parent. He's a man who's a begotten child. He's a man of authority and respected for his wisdom. He's a provider and he's a protector. He's someone to look up to. A father means so many things. There's an understanding heart. One second. It's a source of strength and support right from the very start. It's constant readiness to help in a kind and thoughtful way, with encouragement and forgiveness, no matter what comes your way. It's a special generosity and always affection too. Father means so many things when he's a man like you. Thank you, Dad, for listening, caring, forgiving, and sharing. But especially for just being you, for being supportive, helpful, strong, and generous in everything we needed. You're always there. Then last night I got a very powerful video sent to me from my Rebbitzin at home. And to just summarize it very briefly, the message that this person wanted to give us was said that if you lost someone, they did not leave us. They ascended one floor up, and they're here. They're guiding us. They're watching us. They're inspiring us. They're intervening. They're interceding. They're praying, and they're blessing us. They're on the second floor looking down on us. Don't ever think they are not here. They are here. So, Dad, although your physical presence may not be here, spiritually you will always be here with us, and we will stop, and we will sit, and we will think, and we will talk to you, knowing you're just up there to give us the same good old help and advice when you were here with us. We love you, and you will always be with us in our heart. Again, thank you for everybody being here. Just carry this down for me. Oh, wait, I have one more thing to say. I'm sorry. Oh, God. My son Elliot is here today with me. My oldest son, unfortunately, could not be here today with us. He was the one that made my dad a grandfather, followed by one, two, three, by all. I have to count how many I have. Followed by 4 other great grandchildren that he had to love and hold. So, in honor of him, he sent a message. He said, "Grandpa Jerry, you will be forever loved, be forever remembered. The few things you couldn't master along your great voyage out to the sea, I will do my best to finish mastering for you as I continue to honor your tremendous legacy." That's from his grandson, Adam.
And now I'd like to call up Donna Oringer.
Mom, can you hear me? What? This is only a sound test for you. Can you hear me? Okay, my mother got new ear things, whatever you call them. Right? She wants you to know they cost $2,000 and they do not work. Whatever. All right, Mom. This is an overwhelming moment at an overwhelming time. As I said to my great friend Audrey Moran recently, it does not matter how old we are or how old they are. It's just never a good time or easy to say goodbye. I am truly grateful, as my sisters have said, to all of you who are paying your respects to my dad and our family. My dad would be so touched. And I know Mom will be talking to Dad tonight and telling him everyone who came, what you wore, who spoke to who, and whether the food was any good. Right, Mom? I'm always amazed by funerals as we come together and ultimately learn about the person that has left us in ways that we never expected. I always find myself saying, why didn't I know that before? As people are gone and revealed in ways I wish I'd known when they were alive. It's funny, when I think about my dad, a rush of memories flooded as I sat with my sisters talking about growing up with Rabbi Dime. And our house was filled with music, his music, and we try to share some of that with you when you came in. Frank Sinatra, Tommy Dorsey, big band. Think about the music you're playing for your kids, but don't think about the music they're playing for you. In recent years, I would sit with my dad or run in multiple times during the day. Often he would be sleeping from a day at dialysis, and I asked myself, what should I ask him? What do I want to know now? And I tried, but questions remain. And please, to all of you, ask the questions and do it now while you can. My dad, the son of immigrants, he's a classic American story. His father came over from Poland, Ratna, he used to say, by way of Canada. Because if you recall, in the day, the USA did not allow many Jews to come into America. And so he went to see his brother there, and then ultimately made it here to the States. My grandmother Florence followed, and they married. And although I always recall her stories of having to find potatoes in the fields to eat, so she did not starve. These experiences of privation were certainly represented in my dad's values of striving and saving. He was one of 3 kids. They lived in Borough Park and then ultimately to Queens, Bayside, Long Island, kind of, for those of you who don't know New York. My dad spoke only Yiddish until he was almost 7 years old. He grew up in a conservative Jewish Orthodox home, and his uncle was his idol, Uncle Abi, who's lost his wife and 5 kids in the Holocaust.
His highlight was a weekend movie. I think it cost a nickel. We always talked about money in our family. And to attend a double feature, it always made him smile. My dad was followed by his brother, Norman. My cousins are sitting right there. And they ultimately lived around the corner from us on Long Island with his 3 kids. And I can't tell you how happy I am that my cousin David and his wife Pam now live here in Nocatee. So we still live around the corner from each other, almost. And then my father's sister Helen was born. She was my favorite person in the whole wide world. The apple of my dad's eye, my Aunt Helen, who left us suddenly and unexpectedly a few years ago. I miss her every day. And now she will be joined by her big brother. But we have our little Helen today. Where's little Helen? My dad's great-granddaughter. I'm sorry to miss my cousins, Matthew and Russell, and our favorite Uncle Harold, who are on their way here until the Jacksonville airport very inconveniently closed down. Did they not know? Did my father engineer this? But I loved that you were coming. It was his family that my dad asked for in these past few days while in the hospital. Where is my mother? Where is my father? Did you speak to Norman? At one point, my dad started crying, and I said, Dad, why are you crying? And he said, because my father is not here. And I said, Dad, he's not. So tell me about him. He said he smiled a lot, and he was a happy guy. And I'm thinking, I never saw my grandfather smile once. He was the old mold, stern Eastern European, but I'm thinking, okay, my dad thought he was happy. So I called my Uncle Harold, and I said, Uncle Harold, what about Grandpa? He said, Donna, I never saw him smile either. I was glad that my father was warmed by his father's memory, like we will by our father. He met the love of his life, my mom, Sherry, on a date in the Catskills, a place filled with history for our family. That was a date my mother did not want to go on, but she did. My dad was good looking and a Navy man. Mom, you really did like those men in uniform, didn't you? He loved being a Navy man. There's no doubt in his abundant pride that he shared his entire life, as you heard, talking about his Navy experience. He traveled the world on the USS Boxer, tangentially touched the Korean War. His friends made there were his best. He was a flight engineer, and he wanted to fly, but I think he was colorblind. Did you know that, Mom? Yes, colorblind, affirmation. He started a radio station. They flew on the weekends across the country. It was the Navy, Navy, Navy. He married my mom. She was 18, and he was 21. And they built a life together over these past 70 years. Talk about miracles. Hashem. It should be added to the Torah, a parsha on patience and persistence. And God said to Moses, there will be Jerry and a Sherry, and they will unite. Be ready for anything. You're welcome, Mom. My dad was a really tough guy. He was a taskmaster, the 1B guy. You brought your report card home with all A's and 1B, and he would say, yeah, why'd you get that B? If any of you are parenting like that, please take heed. You might want to rethink. I was the oldest, and so I got the brunt of his command and control style of parenting. And my sisters need to thank me for being their cover. I can tell listening to them, I am well aware they had very different relationships with my dad than I did. And while I know they were not the daughter who climbed out the bedroom window onto the roof to escape, or disappeared for a while unaccountably, yes, they covered for me too. I always felt mad at my dad for one reason or another. He was strict, he was stern, and his first answer was always, I'll think about it. Or no. He continued to maintain Nixon's innocence throughout his life. I'm like, Dad, really? But now I know he was just preparing me for the future we would all live in now. And as the years have passed, I realized just how much he has given me. Funny, Jill, I don't drink coffee, so I missed out on that whole thing. But I love sports. And as a young girl, my dad would read the sports pages every morning. You know, it's so funny. I think about all these things we don't have anymore. But if you remember, there were newspapers, and they were big, right? And so they would cover your face. So here'd be my dad, and I'd be sitting here. And I wanted him to see me, and I wanted him to notice me. And I just figured, well, if I learned sports, then I could talk to him. And so I did. So my dad gave me the New York Mets, the Miracle Mets. And to this day, I am still a fan. And many afternoons, I would sit with him while he worked in his garage listening to the legendary Ralph Kiner call the games. I guess as I think about it, we can all thank my dad for the creation of PGA Tour Radio, because it was due to listening to those games in my garage with my dad that I thought golf on radio would be a great idea. Some people didn't agree, but 25 years later, PGA Tour Radio is a staple for golf fans. My dad gave me the New York Jets. I gave them back, and we both became Jaguar fans. Now, I'm not sure that was a good trade. He loved the Thanksgiving parade and would take the three of us, no matter the weather, to New York City. Actually, it was kind of weather like this. He'd wrap us all up. Sometimes I got the shoulder seat. Some night he'd warm us up with hot chocolate. And it was funny. I was craving hot chocolate on Monday, the day he left us. As the marching bands would go by, my dad would cheer. We would all cheer. And to this day, I love marching bands and the Thanksgiving Day parade. And it always wells me up with emotion. MG will tell you. 9 o'clock morning, NBC, I am there. He was not a supporter of me playing sports, though, past 6th grade. He thought it was unseemly for girls to do that. So I would listen for his car, and when I heard it come around the corner, I would put the stickball down and sit on the curb and cheer the boys on. Yeah, I did do that. It didn't last long as I found basketball, and there was my dad, handy dandy dad. He could fix most anything. At it sunk a pole, cement and all, in our driveway for my new basketball hoop. I played all the time and everywhere I could, and he would come and watch me play. I would come to remind him over the years that basketball turned out to be a pretty good thing, Dad, don't you think? Funny, when MG and I were just in Australia, and we tried to call almost every single day, I asked to talk to my dad, and I think it was Jill, said, Dad, Donna's on the phone. No, it's not Donna. No, it's Donna. I think he knew I was very far away, so he didn't want to believe it was me. So I said, put him on the phone. I said, Dad, I'm going to prove it's me. Ask me what basketball team I played for, and I'll answer it, and then you'll know it's me. And he goes, nah, I can't do it. There were too many. He was good to my friends, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention Sherry, who spent more time with my dad than I did working on production projects that I did over a period of more years after even I came down here, including a huge project we did in Israel. He loved Maccabi, and he came to watch me play in the Maccabiah when I represented the United States and was a member of their board for many, many years. From Long Island to New Jersey and ultimately here to Ponte Vedra, MG and I saw a house we thought they would love, and they moved here. He got to see the twins grow up, Zachary and Jacob. He loved all of his grandchildren, all 8 of them, Morgan, Samantha, Elliot, Adam, Zach, Jacob, and Danielle, who are here, and hello to Adam and Colleen, who could not make it. And also would be remiss if I didn't mention his adopted Chinese son, Zhao, and his sister Li Ping, who he gave all of his love and advice to all the years since they came to America. I know he wasn't expressive or eloquent with language to any of us, but do know he loved us the best way he knew how. And I can say that to all of us. Mom and Dad were always active in the synagogues and made Bethel their home. My dad loved this place, being on the board, and I know he was a pain. He worked on the building committee. He got involved in life. There wasn't a day when he didn't want to tell us how everything could be better, but it just came from a place of love and passion and caring. My dad turned 90 last year. What a miracle. His kidneys were failing. His heart was not in great shape. But he beat whatever that body threw at him over and over again. He had until his last breath the most indomitable will to live. He did not want to go, ever. Ever. So when it came time to celebrate his special birthday, I thought, well, I may be here one day, speaking to a dad who could no longer hear me. I wanted to take the opportunity to tell my dad important things while he still could hear me. So I asked the rabbi if he would indulge me and the congregation for a few minutes to speak from the pulpit on Shabbat in honor of his birthday. The rabbi shared with me the parsha for this Torah reading, which was Pinchas. Pinchas spoke of the issue related to a man who was the father of 5 daughters. My father has 3. Talk about being beshert. And he asks of Moses, who brought the request to God. To paraphrase the request, it was to let their father's name live on. It should not be lost because he had no sons, kind of like my dad. How fitting was it that the parsha was on really women's economic rights? You just can't make this up. The rabbi said, be brief, and I said I would. And I would like to share with you what I shared with him that evening. I was sitting over there. Dad, we come to celebrate Shabbat with you at Bethel, the house of God, because this has always been a place of deep meaning to you. But Bethel was many places, Dad. It was at your mother and father's house for every holiday. Early on, we hid under the table, but there was always chanting. Your favorite Uncle Aby singing and teaching me. Everyone so proud when I could recite the full Kiddush in front of the family. Such encouragement was all I needed to do more. Your Bethel was at Elmont Jewish Center. Me and you always chanting Ne'ilah on Yom Kippur Eve. I was always to your right, my head in those days just perfect shoulder height, so I could lean on you. The Bethel you placed in my heart that delivered me as a wandering Jew arriving alone to find this community in Jacksonville Beach that we now all share. We live in a community where to be Jewish, we have to declare, Hineni, here I am. Dad, here I am. The Bethel where my loving husband pours so much of his love into ensuring that this is a place that grows and prospers, a proper house for all of our Jewish community families. And now Jacob, returned from living in Israel, has refined what Bethel means to him, as my son Zach does the same. Dad, what I say to you tonight and today, in this house of worship, which is a house that you led us to your whole life, is thank you. When bonds can be challenging between dads and daughters, we always have Bethel. Dad, we will always have Bethel. Before I leave you, and I realize this has taken a few minutes, but I hope you got to know my dad a little bit better, because it is his stories and his memories that we do want to take forward with us. But be with me as I address my mom. Mom, hi. You now enter a life that is unlike the life you've had. But Mom, you're ready for it. You are strong. You're full of zest and ideas. You're surrounded by love and friends and support. Dad will always be with you, but you can fly now, Mom. You have given so much of yourself to caring for him. It's your turn, Mom. So now please know that you will be okay. Thanks for joining us today. To all the caregivers, I'd like to say I know Maya's here with us. My dad adored her. And mostly I'd like to say my sister Jill and her husband Gary and Danielle, who have poured so much of their time, love, energy, and research for caring for my dad. Thank you for your blessings, and be sure to know that you are the blessings in our lives.
Yai da 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 ya da 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 ya da ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da da da, ya da 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 da, da da, ya da 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 da. Jerry was a man of many passions, and Shalom Aleichem was one of his favorite songs. So I wanted to bring that melody here today. Another melody that we sing at this time is El Malei Rachamim. God of abundant mercy, God Most High, may the soul of our loved one who has gone into eternity find the gift of perfect peace in your embrace. With the holy and pure whose light shines like the radiance of heaven. Compassionate God, hold him close to you forever, so that his soul may be bound up in the bonds of life eternal. May he find a home with you, and may he rest in peace. And together we say, Amen. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hametzeh Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Im Kedoshim Utehorim, Kezohar Arakia, Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Yosel Ben Fegi Shalach Leolamo, Baal Harachamim Yastirehu Beseter Kenafav Leolamim, Vitzror HaChayim Et Nishmato Adonai hu nachalato, ve'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo, ve'nomar Amen. As we have heard, Jerry was a man of many passions. He was passionate for his family. I heard from the family that Jerry and Sherry's first kiss was on a rowboat because he wasn't allowed to take her onto the ship. So, passion stymied as it may have been by Navy rules, still won out for the day. And after that great kiss, they kept their marriage going after an engagement for a year and had 3 children that Jerry loved and adored. He had different ties with each of them over and above the ties they shared as a family. Donna, sports were yours. Deborah, work together. And Jill, travel. And all of them together, the kids remembered going to the parades, as we have heard. The sea of the men in blue, the marching band's music, fond memories. Jerry was also a man of many talents. A fix-it guy, he could do electrical and plumbing, and as Donna mentioned, he put up the hoop in the driveway for many years of basketball. Jerry was also really good at sports. Soccer was his game. And he went semi-pro. He was very, very talented in many, many ways. He was also a great cook. And so beyond the Thanksgiving Day parade, he also made Thanksgiving dinner. It's good to know a man of so many passions and talents. He loved music. He loved to travel. And he was passionate about Beth El and Jewish community in general. We remember well and fondly all of the passion that Jerry had for this community. And so for Jerry we say, Zichrono livracha, may your memory be a blessing. I know that his memory will be a blessing for me and for this community because of all of the things that Jerry brought to our lives. all of the positive things that he shared with all of us. And so we have those memories not only in our pasts, but we take them into our future. And those ways that he positively affected us, we now share with those that we meet as we positively affect their lives. So Jerry, one floor above, we know that your memory will continue to be a blessing. May the Holy One of blessing, from whom all things come, and to whom all things return, give us light and peace on this day of grief and mourning, and may our service in memory of Jerry Chait bring comfort and support to those who love him. And now, as this service closes, I would like to invite those who would like to accompany us to go to Ponte Vedra Valley Cemetery for the burial, and I'd also like to invite those who wish to stay here, because we will be coming right back after that burial ceremony for a meal of condolence. So thank you all for attending today, and we will see you shortly. Thank you again.